Politics, commentary, entertainment, sports, news and opinion now. Here is Steve Malzberg.
The overwhelming majority of those within Gaza, the civilian deaths, have been caused by Israeli aerial bombing. And what do you say to them that Israel may be losing its soul, may be losing the war because of the political impact of what is happening on the ground?
I hear what you're saying. Israel's not losing its soul. We are upholding our values.
What can I say? What can I say? When Mrs. Alan Greenspan, Andrea Mitchell, asked the ambassador to Israel, is Israel losing its soul? I can't even wrap my head around it. Welcome to the Malzberg panel, folks. Joining us now is prominent Iranian author Dr. Marc Benhuri. He's the author of Price for Freedom, which I have right here in my hand. There it is. You can see it better that way. And also, LIGNET senior analyst Lisa Ruth is with us. And let me start with you, Doctor. You know, when questions like that are asked of Israeli representatives, is Israel losing its soul based on what they're doing in Gaza in a strictly defensive war? Can you what is Israel up against here besides the facts on the ground? They're up against a media like this.
Right. I believe that the media has been from the beginning totally anti-Israel, and the reason for it is, number one, Israel did not start the war, they did. Number two, if Israel did not have it, this high technology defense shield, more than 2-3 million Israeli would be dead by now. And secondly, no country ever in the history that I know of, they notified their enemy that they are going to bomb the building that they know the rockets are there. And if the civilian decided to stay, it is not their fault because they have done everything in order to avoid civilian casualty. But the problem is that the media, they don't say that these people, they're hiding the bombs in their homes, under their couch, and in their basement. And at this point, I do not call them as a civilian. I believe they are in combatant soldier. And also the problem with the Hamas is that they want to blame somebody else. They have never accepted their own responsibility. This is a typical attitude that they have. They blame it, and then when they see the blaming doesn't work, they start rioting and making demonstration and causing problems.
It's one after the other. Let's go to Lisa. Lisa, to what extent do you think this media coverage will or will not influence the ultimate strategy of the Netanyahu government?
I think what we've seen so far is Netanyahu and the government as a whole has really braced itself for this. This is not surprising media coverage, and I don't think it's having any impact whatsoever. Israel's not surprised by this coverage. This is not a change in coverage. It's pretty consistent with the coverage that's been out there. The one thing I do think Israel is concerned about the civilian casualties. They're also in a situation where, as you said, they're doing everything they can to avoid civilian casualties, but there are limits to what they can do. But I don't see the media having really any impact. I don't see the calls for the UN or the US or anybody else. At this point, I think it was a difficult decision to go in. I do think it was foreshadowed at the time that the airstrikes happened, but at the point when they decided to go in, I think they've decided they have got to make a real dent in both the tunnels and the weapon stockpiles, and nobody's going to give them credit no matter what happens, and they're prepared to see it through.
Right. Let me ask you, Doctor, these tunnels, does this smack of Iranian training, the building of these sophisticated tunnels, which Israel has discovered once they went in? They knew there were tunnels, but now they know that there are tunnels that have entering points into Israel that aren't even open yet. That's going to happen at the for the element of surprise. So these are as sophisticated as tunnels could be. How did Hamas get the training to build these things?
Iranian, number one, they start establishing Hezbollah and Hamas as soon as Ayatollah Khomeini took over the power in Iran. Iran is the state-sponsored terrorist organization, and they are the one that they are training them, they are financing them, and they are giving them all the missiles and the weapons. The 75% of the total construction material that entered the Gaza for the houses and the school and shopping or offices, they went to build this tunnel.
Yeah, that's you know, Lisa, when you talk about the fact that we're sitting down with Iran as all this happens and pretending that those talks are in a vacuum, when even independent of the tunnels, certainly, there's so much blood, American blood, Israeli blood, on Iran's hands that one wonders how you could sit with them and certainly how you could trust them.
That is, I really think that is the big issue here. In terms of trust, as you said, this is not happening in a vacuum. And across the Middle East, what we've seen is, for lack of a better term, the Iranian Revolution creating almost this Cold War across the Middle East. And there's no question that Iranian influence, Iranian extremism, and it's certainly thriving in the chaos. They like this. This creates a good situation. U.S. sitting down for these nuclear talks, it's not in isolation. There is very little trust, and yet everyone continues to stay at the table. I think there's strong belief that at this point to abandon the talks would look bad. Goodness sakes, you know, who doesn't want that? But the other side is, there was an interesting piece that LIGNET actually did, Fred Fleitz did earlier, looking at the possibility that Hamas may have even started this conflict with the rockets at the behest of Iran. And I think that's another interesting thing to look at. I'd be curious about other comments on that. The fact that... Yeah, go ahead.
Well, let me ask no, I was going to ask the doctor. Well, we'll ask the doctor when we come back to pick up on that point, whether or not you believe that Hamas is acting at the behest of Iran. And I've heard it speculated today also, I'll ask both of you, whether you think that Hamas, they believe this is their last stand, that's why they've been so intransigent when it comes to ceasefires and insistent upon demands being met just to have a ceasefire, whether this is it for them and they're going all out. We'll come back with part 2 of the Malzberg panel and more of the Steve Malzberg Show after this break, but don't forget, stay tuned for your Newsmax Now update.